Hi everyone, I'm Simon Cooper and welcome to the Strip Club. This is my son George, and today we're going to be stripping this left-hand panel of this old villa door. So what we're doing at the moment is putting the stripper on, and it will work its way through. Now while George is putting that on, you'll notice that it's spray action. He's sweeping, not spraying while his hand's still. That way you don't get the runs. If you spray while it's in one place, it'll drip. Like this, it spreads out nicely, and then the stripper absorbs into the paint, stopping it from dripping. Now, have a look at our guide. So it's a three-step. Step one, strip what's on the surface. So whether it's 20 coats of paint or 1 coat of varnish, same game, it's stripper on, wait for the stripper to reach the surface, keep the surface wet with stripper. What's going to happen soon, as this absorbs in, you can see the bubbles, at some point it'll get a bit thirsty and it will probably need a second coat. Now, on the guide it says not to spray on top of large blisters. So these bubbles we're getting here, if we were to spray more stripper on top of those, we're just wasting our money because the stripper can't get access to the layer underneath. Now, not all finishes bubble. Some finishes just dissolve. In this case, this is old enamel, and this is what enamel does. So George is just directing it onto the bits that haven't bubbled yet. Now, we're looking at doing a lot of live streams, and what's important to us is that we strip things that you're interested in seeing stripped. So if you have any requests, please send them in. Any questions? We want to have a lot of the live streamers really answering your questions. Now, we'll just leave that to do its thing. While we're waiting, at one of the last live streams we did, we were asked a lot about health and safety. It looked like we were bathing in it without any protection. And that was my fault for not explaining what was going on behind the scenes. So first thing when we're using the products is it's important to have ventilation. If you're outside, then of course you've got the environment ventilating for you. If you're inside, then of course you've got to be more aware of things. The stripper itself is very low odor. It's virtually pH neutral. So compared to a normal paint stripper, it's pretty tame. However, ventilation, as I say, is important, and if we sweep a little over to the left, you'll see what we've got going here is a fan. And it's just gently moving the air along, and that way, if you're in a room and you're working on a window or whatever you're doing, you sort of strategically set the fan up so it's just giving you an air exchange every few minutes, and that's ideal for that. If you want, you can get into the masks. You've got the paper ones, which have you get the ones that are got charcoal impregnated in them, and what they do is they're good for solvents. If you want to beef it up to higher levels, you can get the face respirator ones with the charcoal in there, and then you can do the Darth Vader thing, and that's ideal. But ventilation, you can get these big flash masks, and you'll find that if you have no ventilation and you're working with this all day, it's not the right way around to go. It's better to have the air moving and exchanging. How are we going, George?
Very good. I'll switch off some now if you like.
So it's really diseased. So the strippers softened everything there. As I said, it's pointless putting more stripper over the big bubbles, so you get rid of them. Now what you see George doing there is he's using the small square blade. We call it a 4-edge blade, and what it's doing is we're lightly dragging off what's there. We're not trying to take off paint that hasn't softened yet, we're just getting off the bubbly stuff. And And if you've got lots more paint, this door hasn't got lots of paint. We did a door on a live stream a couple of weeks back and that had a huge amount of paint on it. This one's not as painted, but there's other little quirks to show you later. So always use a dragging action if possible. Normally when people use paint stripper, they tend to want to scoop it off. We like to drag it off. There's less chance of damaging the timber. Okay, so he's going to get into those bits. Mouldings are always interesting. People always ask how do we get into these curvy bits, and George will show you a good trick in a moment.
A teaspoon.
So it's always important to be able to raid sun counter the kitchen. The curve of the spoon will fit to most curves if you twist it round. And of course the spoon's made not to damage your mouth, so it's also good for not damaging the wood. What our system is all about at the end of the day is stripping without sanding. And the way we do this is when this door was made, it was sanded by the cabinet maker, the joiner, and that sanding is still underneath all of this paint and varnish, etc. And we're just going to reuse their sanding and see what order it's in. So, on with some more stripper. Sometimes we get a few comments about how much stripper it looks like it's using, and later on I'll tell you how much stripper it would actually use. But for now what you need to be aware of is that this stripper is really thin. And if you were comparing it to a normal gel stripper that you buy out of the hardware store, and if you look at the coverage rates, they normally suggest a 2.5 mil application, which this needs to be put on 16 times to achieve the same thickness. So we prefer to use really thin coats, and that way we don't waste it. Like you saw the first coats of stripper, bubbled up the paint extensively, so we're only getting rid of a small amount of stripper. So now wait again while that does its thing, and I'll continue the health and safety report. So that's the breathing bit. Then we go onto your hands. I've been using paint stripper for, I don't know, 8 years or something now, and other than when I poured it down my gum and burned half my leg off with the stripper I used to use, when I made my own, no damage at all. Now, there's a reason for that. And that is, first thing I do is I go in with barrier cream. So this is a chemical barrier cream. This is not a garden moisturizer. This is not out of the bathroom cupboard. Okay, this is made for solvents and all that sort of thing. So we basically bathe ourselves in it, having the advantage of lack of hair. You can really get in with it, press space, like that. So this will stop anything on the skin. If you do get a little bit on the skin, you'll feel a little, you'll feel it, but it's not going to be a big sting, and it's not going to take your skin off or anything like that. You're not going to wake up in the morning with skin hanging off. Okay, how are we going there?
Well, just putting a few more bits on, some nice little bits. But now we're getting a bit more into the details. Yeah,
so the old devil's in the detail thing. So in these curly-wurly bits there, that's what we're interested in getting into. Screwdrivers are quite a handy device. With a demo like this, it's really important that we don't rush it, because we'll show you some bad habits. It's really important to give the product the time it needs. You can put it on, keep it wet, go away, have a coffee, let it do its thing. It's not going to bleach the timber because you've left it on a little bit too long. It's ideal to just let it do its job. If we have a person that's having a struggle, sometimes it's just purely because they're not leaving it on long enough and they're not keeping it wet. So we're still at the part 1 stage, which is taking off what's on the wood. So everything you're doing is soft. We don't have a handle for these blades. These blades come in our packs, which I'll show you later, our stripping pack. But we don't have a handle with them because we don't want to push hard. We just want to do it softly. We have a lot of people with arthritis and all those sorts of things that use our product because it is not an intense system. So, while George is carrying on there, is there more detail in there that needs to be seen?
Just using a thinner, narrower screwdriver here just to get it a little bit deeper.
It's important to learn the shape of the moulding that you're working on. This moulding is nailed on, so there's behind the moulding there's sometimes paint and down in here, and you've got to learn its shape so you don't go gouging into parts that you shouldn't be. Now, I just want to show you a glove. Now you'll see that George has got a gardener's glove on. Now, I don't know what they have in Australia and everywhere else in the world, but this is the Showa brand, which we get at Countdown in New World. But these are brilliant gloves. They're ideal to wear. They're comfortable, and the rubbery part lasts for ages. Of course, they're not technically a stripper's glove because they've got canvas on the back, and stripper could go through that. But you may notice that we're not actually putting the stripper on the back of our hand. If you're worried about that, then you can put one of those sort of throwaway gloves on first, and then put that one on top. If you're completely paranoid about everything, then this is the full-blown safety glove. It's same company as the gardener's one. They're both made by Showa. The only problem with this big one is they're unbelievably uncomfortable to wear. After about half a day, you'll be beside yourself with them, and after about a day, you'll think something's died in there. So they're not. So even though you're supposed to use them, people then throw them pretty quickly. So this is a glove that does the job. And as I said before, the stripper is virtually pH neutral, so it's not one of the things when I developed the product was I didn't want something that would take my skin off.
All right,
okay,
it's ready to go. Still goopy.
So that layer George has taken off there, this grey stuff, that's a lead base paint on there. This had a lead layer on to start with. Lead doesn't bubble like enamel paint, it just dissolves. And if you were to hit this with a sander, all you're going to do is granulate the lead and spread it around to breathe, which is not a good look. So again, all we're doing is taking off bulk. We're doing that part one, remove what's on the surface.
You can see how easily this comes away as well. I can just smush it off with my finger like this.
That's
coming away like a slurry.
George.
Yeah.
So lead's quite interesting stuff. If you heat gun it, it releases lead vapor. If you sand it granulates the lead. We don't like sanding full stop because it just, whether it's enamel or acrylic or lead, breathing it as a granulated form, it's not good stuff to do that way. And if you've got a mask, then you're still spreading it around the house for everyone else to have a go at. So we tend to be, our system's about, it's really made for people who don't like sanding. Okay, this is part two. Okay, so we're going to give that a minute or two. So back to the guide. So we've taken off what's on the surface. Now we want to strip what's in the surface. So you'll notice both 1 and 2 are both coloured red to go with the red liquid. And so apply stripper, wait a couple of minutes, then we're going to scrub it with the correct scrubbing material, which sounds very ambiguous, but I'll give you a reason why in a moment. And then we're going to wipe it away and then whip on to part 3, which we'll bring into show you later. Now, if you were doing something outside, you would not use this steel wool that George has got in his paws. This is a European steel wool, very long stranded and very sharp, and it's perfect for stripping. And it's ideal for all interior stripping surfaces, except in like a bathroom, like a wet area. But on this door, it's going to be magic. So George is now going to give it a wet scrub in the direction of the grain. He's not going to do circles and things like that. He's going to go in the direction of the grain. And being wet, it's not going to damage anything. We sometimes get asked what grade wool is this. This is grade 2. So it's quite coarse, but it doesn't damage the surface. If you go in the direction of the grain and the surface is wet, no drama. Now this wool is also in our stripping pack. And being the wool will conform to the shape of the moulding. Gets in there really easy. So show how you get behind the moulding things, George.
Will do. I'll put some more on, just to keep it wet.
Yeah, don't scrub it dry. If it is starting to dry a bit, just puff a little bit more on. Remember, we've got 16 applications before we catch up to one coat of the gel, which we're not even going to get close to. We generally strip about 10 times the surface of a normal gel stripper. Sounds a little unbelievable, but we didn't write the numbers on the cans. Okay, George has got this broad knife. Hang on a second, George. Show that. This is what we call a modified broad knife. It's from the Hyde Tool Company, and we've modified the edge and put this little saw edge in it. It's got heaps of good uses, but one thing it's good for is we wrap our steel wool around it, and it grips it, and we can then pull it down behind that moulding. It's really good. I can't claim that particular invention. My cousin Dave made that one up. He's an engineer. Okay, so while George is working on that, I want to talk a little bit about masking. If you do just a quick glance over here, you'll notice that the wall here has got this plastic, and this is a pre-taped masking film that is, I always hesitate to say stripper proof, but it's pretty damn good. Now, I'll show you the roll of it. So it's in a 15-meter roll. This roll is 2.4 meters wide. So we stick it up here, and we unroll it, and then it comes down 2.4 meters. It has one drawback in a way, and that is that it is so sticky, it's quite capable of taking paint off. So what we do is, if you've got a surface that you don't want to damage, you've got to put a low-tack tape on first. So you put the low-tack tape on, the blue one, followed by the pre-taped film, and it's good to go. Now, we supply these plastics in 550 wide and 2.4 meters wide. So in this case today, I put a 2.4 down and another 2.4 on the floor, and we've got a good environment to work in. If I was, say, stripping around a door like here, then you wouldn't want to do a 2.4. You'd do the 550 wide one, because it would come out to about there, and that would be ideal. So between those two, it's good. We also have a tape that's the same tape that's on the pre-tape film, and so there are parts that you need to use that by itself. Now the low-tack tape, we don't supply that because you can get that at any paint store, hardware store, but you've got to make sure it's got low tack. The colour of blue means nothing, it's about the stick level. You're looking for low tack, delicate surface type tape. And that is the story about that. You'll notice George was using a shield when he was spraying before, so if you think there could be a bit of overspray, just a bit of common sense with that helps as well. So, they're coming along nicely now.
Can I also run this through these grooves?
Cool. You'll notice on a door like this, there's 8 panels, like on both sides, and there's 32 miters. So there's quite a lot of wood to get over, and so you'll spend a little bit of time working your way through the whole door, but far less than you would if you were sanding. Some people will say, oh well, I'll just get my door dipped. Well, get me going about dipping for hours. This does no damage to the timber. It doesn't do any damage to the joints, and it doesn't take any of the colour out. You keep the natural colour. Sometimes people will say, how much can I do at a time? On a door, you always start with a test first. So we, down the bottom here, earlier on, we did a test strip just to see how the door was going to respond. And from the test, we can then say, okay, this is how we're going to attack the job. Every job is slightly different. And so that part one of the system, taking off bulk, you can do that over a larger area. I like working on panel for panel, and maybe when I'm getting close to the end of a panel, I will wet up the next panel. I don't want to be sitting down having heaps of time up my sleeve, because then it takes way too long. And I don't want to strip too much at a time, because then you get out of control and then it's not any fun anymore. So you'll quickly adapt as you go. So I see there's a little bit of borer at the top. Borer is always a bit of fun. So, a little story about borer. If you're selling borer treatment, then you want to scare the people into believing their house will fall apart. These aren't termites, this is borer. Borer only eats sapwood, which is the outer part of the tree. If you follow a logging truck, you'll see the sap around the outside, and you'll get the heart timber on the inside. So in this borer up here, this piece of timber, this top rail, is sappier timber. The borer get into it because it's good food for them. It's the sugars in the timber itself. As the timber turns into heart timber, as the tree gets bigger, etc., the heart timber has nothing for the borer to eat. It's not that the borer blunt their teeth on it, and they can happily chew through it, but they just don't, because there's no reason to eat it. And so when you've got borer in this top rail, if there's no borer at the moment in, say, the side rail, don't worry about it, because it's not going to transfer across. The door's well over 100 years old, and it pretty much has done what it's going to do. It's not an absolute. People often will see a bit of borer on the ground and think that they must then have the dust, they must have active borer, but that doesn't mean that. It just means as the borer is working its way through the timber, behind where it's been, it's filling its tunnel up with dust and borer doo-doos. And what happens is, as the door's opening and closing and banging and that sort of thing, what happens is dust falls out. So it doesn't mean you've got active borer. The borer may have, at the hole that you see, the round bit, that's where the borer has left. It's not where the borer enters. So that's where it exited stage left, say 80 years ago. And so we often get very paranoid about the stuff. Now, one of the cool things with our system is because we're not taking timber off, you're not going to open up the trowels. If you were to sand this door, you would probably have these little trails in between it all, which would look revolting. And so this, again, will just leave the holes as they are, and I'll show you some tricks later on those. This panel doesn't appear to, does it have any, has it got any borer?
It's got staples, but
no borer?
Not borer.
Oh,
The doors are a different kind. It's got borer up here though.
Yeah. So the panel's heart timber, so that will be fine. We see people borer bombing their houses every year, putting chemical around the house, and we're not saying don't do it, but I actually find it a waste of time, because if you've got a nice antique piece of finish that's made from heart, mahogany or oak or something like that, the borer's not going to do a thing to it. Often in furniture you'll have a drawer side that's made out of a lower grade timber that might get it, but it's probably already going to have it. Borer doesn't stick just to one house, it moves around the neighbourhood. What else about my wonderful borer topic? I think I've pretty much done that one to death. Oh, that's right. In a house, sarking, in the old days you didn't have jibboard. They used cheaper grade timber. They'd go outside, cut the tree down, they would mill it, all the studs and joists and everything could be out of heart, but the sarking on top may be out of the sapwood, and that would get the borer. And so when you rip the sarking off sometime, you'd find that the studs are in perfect order. Again, this blade's perfect for these joints that have opened up a bit.
And that's basically done. Then we're just going to give a little scrub up a little bit there, and then I'll just flush it.
Make a good border. Sometimes you can't see around corners. That's right. Now we'll very shortly be going on to part 3, and part 3 is the blue one. And go for it, George. So part 3, flush the surface clean, and that's, you'll see down here we've got spray scrub, spray wipe, and so basically this blue liquid is our flusher. It's a solvent based on paraffin, so it's a paraffin based spirit, and it's got quite a lot of scrub time it gives us. It's not fast evaporating like you would get with meths or thinners or something like that. This gives you more time to work with it. It sort of smells a little bit like candles. That's quite nice. Now, so you spray the stuff on, and you don't wait 5-10 minutes. You're scrubbing it instantly. And you're using the grip pad there, are you, George?
Yep.
So can you pass me the grip pad?
Sure.
Explain it. Okay. Again, it says use the appropriate scrubbing material. So this is what we call a grit embedded pad. So it's like a nylon weave when it's got like a grit put into it. So now we're not using that grit to sand the surface. What we're doing is using the grit to get into the sandpaper marks. When the person made the door and they sanded it, it left thousands of little marks on the door, which are supposed to be there, and they're all full of soft varnish and stuff from the stripper that the rag and the steel wool can't get at, and so the grit does. And so you quickly put the flusher on, you give it a quick scrub, and then you spray some more flusher on, and then you wipe it dry. So spray scrub, spray wipe. Now the purpose of this flushing phase 3 this is the no sanding part. This is where it gets rid of any of the residues of stripper, residues of soft paint or varnish or soft lead or anything, and this will leave us with a clean, dry, absorbent surface. So this part is the quickest part of the 3 steps, and what we'll do is you've got your brushes as well at some point too, eh?
Yeah.
Yep. So you look at a door like this in a demo yard or in the house or something, you'd think it was a write-off, but this door is in good order. It just needed a makeover. Now you use about half the amount of flusher generally as stripper. So even again, while George is putting on a few coats, it's not much liquid per application, and it's just light amounts, and it's diluting the residues. It's not stripping it, it's liquefying it, allowing us to wipe it off. And so the stripping phase is now on the point of finishing. We're going to show you in a minute a finishing system as well, but this is very, very close. And then we have what we have is a detail brush.
Where's the...
Yeah, hit it over here for you.
Gents.
So clean rag around the blade. So you can see all that dirt that comes out. Now, doors like this it's a good rainy day job, and you may, I don't know if you can hear any rain in the background, but we've got quite a storm in progress today. But that doesn't mean restoration needs to stop. Okay, George, show the brushes.
Will do.
George likes making it perfect, guys. I'm going to hold him back a little bit.
Alright.
And no, you can't have him restore your house.
It's got the copper detail brushes, which are actually quite soft. And these are really good for just slipping into little bits, just to so that it lasts a little bit residue.
So yes, these brushes are easy to hang on to. We just use them right at the end. We call them a detail brush just because that's how we're using them. So you do this part normally right at the end when you're titivating the whole job. Okay, now give it a puff of flush, George, over the whole thing. We're basically done. And we've got a saying, and that is the wet look is the finished look. So the whole door, if you were to put a clear finish on, this is what you're going to get. So from over here to there without getting the sander out. Now, it's easier to get a sander on these parts here, no worries at all. You could even get a sander in here and leave these big half moon corners, but then all the mouldings. And we go to a lot of places where that's been done and then it just turns into a nightmare. With this, you don't get that. Now, the only thing we've got here is this weird little patch there. Now, what that is, it's probably some water damage. It may be where the staple was, it's got into there. So you can do a repair on that. You can get, you've just got to be careful with these things because you sometimes then have to do things all over the door. What I like to do is to call it character and embrace it and cherish it because it's just part of its story. So let's get that dried off because we've got to moisturise it, George. And character is a personal thing. It's always in the eye of the beholder. Now, let's put some moisturiser on. At this point, you can finish it with anything you like. You could polyurethane it, you could shellac it, French polish it, you could beeswax it. If you've got some homebrew you've been using, that's fine. You can do anything you like. And you don't have to sand because it doesn't need sanding, it's as smooth as. Now, you basically, normally if you were doing a polyurethane, you'd leave this overnight and tomorrow you would put it on. For us today, we're going to use our moisturiser. So on with it, George, and I'll get my bottle of it and explain it. This is a product that we make, and here it is here. This is moisturiser. This is a blend of gum, oil and wax, all synthetic, and this is a little bit like a leather care product for wood. And what we're doing is we're slapping it on. You don't have to be good with a brush. Now today's very, very humid. Summer and rain all together, and it's humid as in a lot of finishes. If you put them on now, they'd fail because the humidity would be too high. But this, it doesn't matter. And I'll explain a little bit more afterwards. But the blend of the gum, oil and wax, what we're doing is we're conditioning the wood. It's going to absorb into the timber and it's going to drink away for a couple of days. Doesn't matter if you left it on for a couple of weeks. It's just going to absorb and absorb. Now, what you do with this is you normally will put it on and you'd come back tomorrow and you'd check it out. You'd see how it's going. And by that, what I mean is you're looking to see if there's any parts that have fully absorbed. And so if you've got any dry looking patches, you would just slap more over top. There's no sanding lightly between applications or anything. You're just putting it where it needs. So if you find the top rails a bit thirstier than the heart panel, just put it where it's got thirsty. And this is particularly important on things like windowsills, etc., where it's really being hammered by the sun. So on she goes. Now we got any borer, George, that we can play with?
Yes, up here.
Anything with white paint on? Down here, what's that one there? There's one there, isn't it?
Yes, we got the ones there.
Okay. I got opinions on borer, as you heard before. Up here, these holes are clean holes. The borers come out, there's no paint gone in, and so I'd almost say don't worry about them, leave them alone. Over here, check out how that moisturiser is drinking up. I don't know if you can, how easy it is to see, but you can see the moisturiser is just drinking up, the wood's as dry as. And down here, so this door's just gonna come alive. So that borer there, for me, I would not worry about them. I would just moisturise them, not worry about filling or anything. Down here, so where you got the white paint, whatever, in the holes, some people would go, okay, well, I don't care, that's all fine, it's character. Other people say, no, can't handle having a little white hole. So George, drill.
Will do.
So the simplest way I've found of getting rid of them is you get a small drill bit, and once the moisturiser's on, not before, you position it, don't slip everywhere with the drill, and drill it out. Either leave it like that, or we go on to a cool little thing, often steel's the show. This is called friction filling, and so we find a filler that we think's about right. So in there, and this is a wax crayon type filler. We give that a friction fill. We rub hard. In the winter, it's harder, so you leave them in your pocket to soften up in a plastic bag. This time of the year, they soften up as they are. It's almost too light, isn't it, George?
Go to the other one. Which would be not that one. That one.
So let's dig them out.
Just smear it over.
So if you find the colours not quite right, then you just use a darker colour and boom. So it's very, very flexible. Then you've just got the moisturiser on, then you leave it alone. So you can go and fill up anything you like. If there were nail holes or anything like that. What George just did now, he used a bit of steel wool around the hole to get rid of any build-up around it. And so you leave it, and you look up here, Arthur. There. See how that little square bit's is 30 yards. So we just slap more moisturiser on. So we'll be taking it off in a second, which is 2 days too soon. But it'll give you the idea. And this door will just, the colours will just come screaming out. That there, again, it's just really thirsty. And when you just polyurethane over top of a strip door, the wood is as dry as still, and so often the new finish has failed because the wood was over dry, over weathered. Now, 2 days has gone by. We appreciate you watching all that time, and we now take off what's surplus. When this finish is not going to dry, it's just going to drink, as the leather care would. And now what we do is we get a dry cloth, and we just simply buff off. We just wipe off any excess moisturiser. This rag can go into a plastic bag and be used for dusting and that sort of thing, so you're not throwing anything away. And you just remove. And then you give it a burnish, you give it a bit of a polish. And we are done. And we go, ooh, baby's bottoms often get brought into the conversation about now. And you notice there's no drips everywhere, but people often think because our strip is thin it's going to run everywhere, but it doesn't. It's all in the techniques. And that's that. So George has just worked on one panel from start to finish. In the real job he'd be working on multiple panels at a time, so that it wouldn't take that time times 2 to do 2 panels. It takes less. Now, I've mentioned different products as they come through, and at this time I like to do is to show you what you need. And so I'll just move a bit of this stuff. So, got the trusty hat back on. How much do you need? To do that whole side of the door, you're going to need around about 3/4 of a pack litre. So this word pack litre is a bit of jargon, a bit of Cooper's jargon. Well, I'll explain what I mean. So it'll be 1.5 pack litres for both sides, 3/4 for one side. So George, can you help me with the table? Sure. Yeah. Okay, this is a 10-litre stripping pack. We have packs from 2 litres to 200 litres. And so 200 litres sounds like a lot of stripper, and it is, but if you've got a big massive sheep station mansion, then that's what you're going to need. And if you've just got some bits of furniture, then a 2 litre would be great. A house full of doors, a house full of windows, a 10 litres, a pretty normal pack to be getting. So, what do we get? Well, the 10 litre indicates stripper. So there's 10 litres, so there's 10 litres of strip. And then you've got applicator bottles. So So this pack's set up for a couple of people. You get lonely, and there's a couple of spare triggers in there as well. And before I show you anything else, I've got something earlier, and that is, these are not normal triggers. They're not the ones you get at the garden centre. They do not have a rubber O-ring. Normal triggers, they have the O-rings and they last seconds before they come apart. So these ones are ideal. They don't last forever. It's really important to clean them at the end of the session. So when you've, like George has just finished this one here, before he goes home tonight, he cleans out his trigger, he puts whatever stripper is left back into the tin, he empties the trigger back into the tin, and then he rinses through it, pumps through a few little puffs of the flush, because the chamber in here is what we want to keep good and clean. And so that does that. Now, then, in the second box, we have a tap and a cap. These are cool. They go onto the cans, obviously, and turn it into a bit of a wine cask for you. So they're brilliant. Make pouring super duper easy. Then we have flusher, and as I said earlier, it's about a 2 to 1. So 10 litres of strip, 5 litres of flush, and for every litre of stripper, we have a metre of wool. So we have 10 metres of our steel wool, and we have our grip pads. So there's 2 metres there. These are all cut into 250mm lengths. So there's a couple of metres of grip pad. We've got ourselves a couple of those little 4-edge blades that we were using, and we've got an extra tap for the other product. And we've got 4 of our brushes. Just a quick note on the brush: to clean them, you comb them through like an old wire brush to keep them good and fresh. So 4 of those, and that is the pack. Now in all our packs, we have a little giveaway. Sounds like we're all sweetness and light here. Basically, here's a little sample of the moisturiser, little 60ml jar. If you know you want it, then get the bigger sizes. They start at ½ litre and go right up to whatever size you want. So that's that. Now, question out there no doubt will be, well, how much does it cost? Well, it all depends on what part of planet Earth you live on. Our products are, we air freight all over the world, and so it depends on where you are. So go online and check that all out for yourself. And our website, we've even got a poster made for you. Up there. coopersstripclub.com. 2 S's. Okay, coopersstripclub.com. Go in there and have all the sizes and costs and heaps of projects and all sorts of stuff. Now, while you're there, it's cool to actually join our strip club. We have a strip club, and one of the benefits you get instantly is if you join the strip club, you'll get sent a code for a discount voucher for when you buy online. For a month, you get 20% off. So if you're keen on what you've seen and you want to get some and you want to save some money, join the strip club online and bang, that's there for you. Now, there was a couple of things we used in here that aren't in the pack. For instance, the moisturiser. So the moisturiser, if you want a strip to paint, then obviously you don't want the moisturiser. But if you do like our finish, then here it is. And that is all different sizes. Generally speaking, you use, for 10 litres of strip, you use 5 litres of flush, and you use about 2.5 litres of moisturiser. It works down in halves generally. And also the masking products that I had aren't in the packs, because sometimes, like a door, you can just take them out to the garage and put a bit of polythene down. It's more when you're stripping indoors that you need that. And as George is showing me here, the broad knives that we have with the edge in there, they're a separate item. And the wax sticks, we have a whole bunch of colours, about 8 colours or something of those. And on those. Now, on a little note on the wax stick, we have a black one which is lurking somewhere, and that's ideal for where there's rust. So if, for instance, there was, like on a floorboard, if there was a nail with black rust around it, if you fill it with the wood colour, it'll look like an eyeball. So you're doing the black ones better. But you'll see that another day. So that's the products. And what have I got written on my board? There's a million things to remember to talk about. Yes, next week. That's a good one. Next week we're going to be doing 3 live streams where we are basically this year going to be taking our business from a home show business to a live stream business, and it revolves around the things that you guys want to see. So you might want to see a car stripped, or want to see some concrete stripped, or a deck stripped, or windows inside, outside. It's any paint, any varnish, any surface, and we basically want to strip the things that you want to see stripped. Now, so the live streams next week are on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday at midday. So not at this time, midday. And I'm going to show you what we've got planned for Tuesday. So hang there. Where can we put this? Can you see him? Okay. This is a Jacobine chair, oak chair. Jacobine is basically this barley twist, and my wife Dory, she bought 2 of them the other day on Trade Meet, and I just saw them as a stripping opportunity. So we stripped this piece before, just to see what we're going to get ourselves into. So midday next Tuesday we'll be attacking. We've got the second one that we'll get into, and so that's it. So we have a little saying you've heard before: if you're looking for a stripper that really gets it off, Cooper's the stripper that gets it off every time.